Hey everyone, welcome back to the Jen and Gina show. I'm Gina and my friend Jen is on the phone. Say hi, Jen.
Hi, everyone.
On episode 8, we are going to be discussing solar farms and how it pertains to local government power. And in order for you to get an understanding of what we're talking about, we're going to explain to you the difference between the decision making for the zoning for Franklin Township versus Henry Clay Township. And so, for you to have a better understanding of what we're talking about, back in May of this year, on the school board agenda, there was an item under A, buildings, grounds, and operations, and it was an informational item. Number 2, the Fayette County Zoning Board will hold a public hearing on 5/21/25 regarding the petition to grant a special extension for a solar farm adjacent to the Franklin Elementary School as presented in attachment 2. And so we're going to attach that agenda in the comments as well as the attachments so that you know what we're referring to. And in that attachment, it was changing the zoning from agricultural to industrial. And why is that important to note, Jen?
Well, that is important because industrial means that they're applying for a solar farm, and that now you can apply for LERTA.
Yes.
We all know what LERTA does to school districts.
And so that's a rabbit hole to go under for a different day. But LERTA is very key in all this because it will affect the tax revenue that will be a part of building these solar farms on these properties. And so that's a rabbit hole to go under a different day because that's an extensive conversation that we need to have in just one episode. And so why is, I guess my question to you, Jen, why do you think it's important for everybody to know that this is happening at the Fayette County level rather than the township, at Franklin Township?
Okay, so Franklin Township lost their voting rights as for zoning. Therefore, they have to do it at the county level. And when you do it at the county level, you're subject to what they want, and they wanted an attorney. Only attorneys were allowed to speak on the community's behalf. People were not. Henry Clay Township still owns their voting rights for zoning ordinance. Therefore, they can yay or nay it right there. They can nix it right at their township level.
Yes, the township supervisors have the decision-making power, and this is why we believe that this is true. If you go to the Herald Standard, was it the Herald Standard? Online.
Yes.
Okay, so Henry Clay Township, they posted a notice on October 8th of this year for a public hearing of intention to adopt proposed Henry Clay Township ordinances 225-2. And so in that ordinance, which we're going to put as a comment as well, the ordinance refers to amending the township zoning ordinance adopted on June 2nd, 1997, relative to the solar energy system. And so the township supervisors will directly impact whether or not they update that ordinance. And the reason why it is crucial for the people in the township, Henry Clay Township, to understand that is because you have an election coming up where you're going to be voting for those township supervisors and whether or not they retain their seats. And if I were a person who resided in that township, I think that I would probably do my due diligence in calling them to ask them what this is all about. And like I said, we're going to be talking about solar farms in another episode, but because your township supervisors are more tangible to you than a zoning officer or a zoning board officer at the county level was for Franklin. And so the only way that we even were able to fight it was there was a lot of people from the township that actually showed up. So because there was a bunch of people that came to advocate for us not wanting that in our community, the zoning board had to at least consider that. And because the person who was trying to get that zoning ordinance changed didn't actually show up for the hearing, and I believe it was because there were so many people that were there sort of advocating against it because we don't want it there. And why is it a problem to have solar farms in your area, Jen?
Well, solar farms, over the span that they're there, will severely degrade your soil. You will no longer be able to use your soil for planting purposes or farming or agriculture. So you have to look at the long-term effects there. You also have to look into your fire suppression needs for that area.
And that's big. Yes.
If it catches fire, and that's expensive, and you're going to have to look into who's paying for what.
Yes. And so we think that, to me, if they're considering that as along with the ordinance 25-1, which pertains to the burning ordinance, are they correlated in some way? I guess that's what we were sort of inquiring about as well. And we're going to attach ordinance 25-1 in the comments as well. Because if they're going to reconsider their burn ordinance and you're no longer allowed to burn trash freely or burn whatever it is that's included in the ordinance, then I would guess that you would have to get rid of your waste somehow, and that would require them then having to bring some sort of waste management company in order to get rid of that waste, right, Jen?
Right. You'll be subject to a contract with waste management of some kind of garbage company that your township will approve and vote on. You will have no say in, unless you show up to the voting hearing.
Right. And then also in the voting booth, like I said, I mean, part of these public meetings is where you have the opportunity to voice your concerns or your opinions or to ask questions, because your local elected officials should be answering these questions. And if you have to do your due diligence in order to ask these questions, because who sits in those positions will absolutely affect what directions those decisions will go, and you have direct access to them because they're leading your township and not the county. They're not the county level, right, Jen?
Correct. They're leaving your township. That's right. They're not the county level.
Right, and so they are their direct constituents. They're vying for your vote in order to retain their position. And so I think this is a pretty serious subject, because with solar farms comes the disruption of wildlife. And if people depend on hunting in order to provide food for their family, I also saw discussions about the SNAP program going away, and it's been a concern to some of the residents up there. And I do believe that, taking away the option of providing your family with food by hunting or producing crops on these lands that are being overtaken by solar farms, I think that this is taking your ability away to taking care of your own community. And I think that's the real concern here. Right, Jen?
They're slowly taking away your right to do as you please.
Right, to live
how you choose.
Right, and to not be dependent on the government and the government programs in order to survive on a regular basis. And so, a large part of fighting for freedom is for smaller government and more freedom over our own choices. And your choices are being eroded in your backyard. So we're thinking, we wanted to do this episode to bring your attention to it, because we came across a couple of posts that we thought were very important for you to understand, and how, the difference between Franklin Township and Henry Clay Township is the fact that you have more access to the people that are making those decisions. And I believe that this is a foreshadowing of what's happening with the AJ property. And is this a short-term gain for a long-term problem? Is it going to create more tax increases in the future because of the residual effects after they're no longer usable, or they don't produce as much solar energy? That's a conversation for another day. Those are things that I believe that we're going to talk about when we talk about the solar energy episode the solar farms coming to your neighborhood.
Right, you can look up the DEP permit as well, because if there's a solar farm coming in, you can look that up on the DEP website for that area.
Yeah, because
and you can see if one's already been applied for and if that's the plan.
Right, because they have to be approved by the DEP in order to move on to the next phase. So that's part of the beginning stages to find out whether or not, you know, they're coming to your backyard. So
I will attach that website as well.
Okay, and so that's all we have right now. We will hopefully see you guys in the near future. All right, bye.
Bye, everyone.